For many of us, legacy begins with our family. For me, more specifically, legacy begins and ends with my children. Being able to pass down wisdom and knowledge and to encourage them to plant seeds in this world has been priceless. June 6, 2016 was a beautiful day. Children were out playing and laughing, riding their bikes up and down the sidewalk, chasing each other across their front yards, while their parents sat conversing with one another. It was peaceful. Two young men were walking across the street when suddenly an SUV came down the street at a high rate of speed, witnesses say with guns drawn in the window. Gunshots rang out. And at the end, one of those young men lay on the ground, gasping for air and taking his last breath. That young man was my son, and his name is Henry Green V, affectionately known as Bubby. I will never forget the call from my sister, crying and screaming, "They killed Bubby." My heart sunk, stopped, all at the same time. I'm confused, wondering who would want to hurt my son. I would soon learn that that white SUV with tinted windows and Florida tags belonged to two plainclothes police officers from Columbus Police Department, whom witnesses say did not immediately identify themselves. My first encounter with Columbus Police after my son's death was sitting at a table across from a detective who early in our conversation said to me and my son's father, "I see your son was not a felon." I sat back, baffled for a moment. And then I leaned in and said to him, "I don't care if my son had a rap sheet that went around this city 39 times. I am talking about on that day, in that moment, what was my son doing that your officers encountered him in the first place?" And to that, he provided the typical response: "The investigation is ongoing." It was at that moment I realized that I was in for the fight of my life. There would be no time to grieve because something had to be done. But unbeknownst to me, I would quickly learn just how many protective barriers there are for police officers. So I called the Attorney General's office. The young man who answered was respectful and patient as he listened to me explain my situation and my request for the Attorney General's office to come in and do an independent investigation. And he quietly responded, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but Ohio is a home rule state. Home rule means that whoever has jurisdiction, unless they invite another agency in to assist or take over an investigation, no one else can come in." So I said to him, "They killed my son. They have all of the evidence. They create the narrative, and there's nothing that I can do." He again quietly responded, "Ma'am, I'm sorry." And to that, I said, "I'm confused." A couple of days later, I would meet my attorney for the first time, and he would explain to my family, "These cases are hard to win because of one major barrier: qualified immunity." See, qualified immunity takes away our right as citizens to sue public officials for violating our civil rights. The interesting thing is qualified immunity did not start out that way. The Civil Rights Act of 1871, also known as the Ku Klux Klan Act, gave Americans the right to sue public officials. See, at that time, black men had just become eligible to vote and to run for office. And the Ku Klux Klan was terrorizing communities, hence the reason for the Civil Rights Act in the first place. But almost 100 years later, the U.S. Supreme Court would make a decision during the civil rights movement as we know it that would change the trajectory of qualified immunity to what we see and have today, which has caused a lack of accountability. And then on a local level, there has been the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, the Police Officers Union, who fights tirelessly to keep these police officers on the force. For example, one of the officers who killed my son, not even a month after being cleared by the grand jury for killing my son, was caught on camera stomping the head of a black handcuffed man. He lost his job, but the FOP fought to get his job back. And through arbitration, he did. He was reinstated. He was paid back pay. And he got his seniority back. So what can we do as a community to push for the changes that are necessary for police departments across this country? I would say that we have one of the most powerful weapons collectively, and that is our vote. We have the power to expect and demand from our leadership the changes that are necessary. The mayor hires and fires police chiefs. The police chief sets the culture and the climate in the police department. City council negotiates the contract with the FOP. And our state and federal legislators have the power and the ability to introduce legislation that would force police departments across this country to change their policies. So what am I asking you to do? There are a couple of things that I have been pushing for. And I would hope that you would get involved and call your state legislators and your federal legislators to do the same. One, ask them, are they willing to support or introduce legislation that would mandate police officers be drug tested after shootings or after excessive force incidents that cause serious bodily harm? Also, ask them, are they willing to introduce legislation that will strip officers of their certification when they have multiple excessive force incidents? So I say again, there are many things that need to be changed when it comes to police departments across this country. But there is a responsibility and a part that we can take. So while we go out and vote, I encourage you to know why you're voting, who you're voting for, and demand the accountability that is necessary for all communities to be safe across this country. When you do this, you're not only standing with me and my son, you are standing with all of the families before me, and unfortunately, the families after me, who have had a family member killed by a police officer. So I again say, use your power, use your voice, vote, and require the changes for our communities to be safe. Thank you, and God bless.